Hello, everybody. I'm John, also known as Big Bad Biologist, and welcome to my Big Bad Bench. So I'm excited to get this project started. So we're going to jump right into it and sort of introduce it as we go along. So, as you can see here, this is a mess of stuff. And so the core motherboard here is an Asus P2B-D. This thing was a Pentium. Well, I mean, technically, the P2B goes back to the Pentium 2 era, or the BX chipset that's on this thing goes back to the Pentium 2 era, but Asus made this chipset last forever. So I think this board came out in like 1999, and I was in college as a poor undergrad, so I could not afford this thing when it first came out. I used my Asus P2L97 motherboard for a very long time with a Pentium 2 in it. But I got a hold of one of these a couple years ago, and it was in pretty rough shape. Apparently, the guy had owned a computer business, so I'm going to start assembling here as we go along. The A guy had owned a computer business, and he used this as a server, but it sort of hung out in his basement for a long time, and so basically it was caked with all kinds of nastiness. You could tell that it had been stored in humidity. And when I went and looked at the heat sinks, they were totally caked up. There was massive corrosion in here. So these things have had an acid bath to sort of get rid of some of that corrosion. But it's working a lot. They look a lot better than they used to. So one of the exciting things when I opened this thing up was this, or these, two of these things, Powerleap P3 slash SMPs. And these things are what's known as socket adapters. So the motherboard is a socket one motherboard, or a slot one motherboard, accepting Pentium 2s and Pentium 3s that are in the socket, the slot formation. But socket 370 was a later iteration of the Pentium 3s. First, there was the Coppermine revisions of these things, and also the Celerons before that. But this particular set of P3 CPUs is I'm going to mispronounce this, Tualatin, Tualatin CPUs, and these were a later revision of the Pentium 3 that went fairly highly clocked. So the first Pentium 3s I think were 400 megahertz. Later revisions, went up from there, but these ones clocked up to like 1.4 gigahertz, and I have one in another computer, a single core shuttle SV25 system that can clock up to about 1.5 gigahertz. So I look forward to doing some overclocking with these things eventually. But one of the things we need to do today is to make this motherboard actually get to the right front side bus speed to support that 1.2 gigahertz. 1.26 gigahertz that these things do. So what I want to do first, though, is just get this thing reassembled, because it's basically been disassembled for a couple years. After I bought the computer and saw how nasty it was inside, I basically disassembled it and let it sit there. But I thought that GPU June would be a great opportunity to get this thing running again. This month's been kind of crazy, so I haven't had a chance to do much streaming and PC building. Okay, so we got our heat sinks installed. These fans were totally caked up with nastiness. So I took them all apart, lubricated, and rebuilt them. So these Powerleap adapters, aside from letting you, just convert sockets to slots, they allowed additional functionality. So these Tualatin processors use different kinds of voltages and stuff, and so you couldn't just take a Tualatin processor and cram it into any socket 370 board. It needed to officially support it, and I think officially Intel only allowed the 815 chipset to support the Tualatin processors. Various motherboards, like Asus, made modifications and allowed the boards to work, or allowed non-815 motherboards to work with these processors. But these things basically ignored the voltage issues that separated the copper mines from the Tualatins. And so hopefully all this still works. But the BX chipset originally only supported 100 megahertz and 66 megahertz front-side bus CPUs. So when the Tualatins came around and they had 133 megahertz front-side bus, that caused some issues with the BX chipset. That was one of the reasons the 815 chipset was used. So the mod that we need to do is going to be to allow this motherboard to natively support 133 megahertz front-side bus. If we look, let's zoom in a little bit here. If we look on the motherboard, there's actually settings that will allow 133 megahertz front-side bus for overclocking, but there's sort of an issue with this. So as you can see in this little set of things I have here, so if we're looking at the the multiplier on these CPUs is locked at whatever they're supposed to be. So for these particular CPUs, we're at a multiplier of 9.5. So 9.5 times 133 equals our target CPU speed of 1.26 gigahertz. This motherboard officially only supported up to 100, so basically our CPUs are stuck at 950 megahertz. But the other main issue is that the PCI bus is derived off of whatever your front side bus is divided by a multiplier. And so with the default settings provided by this motherboard, the front side bus at 100 megahertz divided by 3 equals 33.3, and that's what the PCI bus is supposed to be at. But in the settings provided on here, when you change this to 133, this divider is still set at 3, and so that sets the PCI bus at 44 megahertz, and that screws up a lot of stuff. And so what we need to do is modify this thing so that it actually uses the right dividers. And so there's a website, and I have the link in my description, where they describe changing the motherboard, altering the motherboard so that this clock generator actually does the right kind of division. And so that's what we're going to be today. Hey, VS Switch Zero, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, the BX chipset was awesome. I think there were even some benchmarks that kind of showed that there were times that the memory actually was better, the memory speeds were better in the BX chipset than the 815 chipset, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the Celeron 300A was an awesome CPU back in the day for overclocking. Basically, it was one of it was a 300 or 66 megahertz front side bus CPU that when you just changed a little jumper, or if you had a software setting like 8-bit motherboards used to have, you could change it right to 100 megahertz front side bus and you get 450 megahertz out of it. But if you had a really good motherboard, you could make the front side bus go even higher, and then really crank the hell out of that thing. And 600 megahertz is pretty awesome. I never was that lucky. My 300A only made it up to I think 450 was really its limit, and I had to work to get it to that point. I don't even know if I have a 300A anymore. They were such awesome CPUs. So I'm just installing the retaining brackets for these CPUs. It's probably not necessary, but I mean, these heat sinks are real copper, and so they're fairly heavy, and so I want to get the retaining mechanisms on here and support this thing. And it is going to drive me a little bit nuts that my retaining brackets aren't perfectly the same, but I'll eventually find another one to make them identical. VS Switch, do you remember what kind of heatsink you used on that thing to get it? Some scary voltages. Ooh, I don't even want to think about how scary those scary voltages might be. There were some really creative heatsinks back in the day, considering the back in the Pentium days. A lot of heatsinks had been designed for stuff like this. Then flipping a processor up on its side created some interesting engineering issues for the heatsink manufacturers, and there was a lot more heat also, so there was all kinds of big giant blocks of stuff that needed to be engineered in order to cool those things. And then once everybody got used to the socket, or the regular slot CPUs, and they had the big flat metal plate on them, Intel changed it up again, and so then they had to re-engineer the slot heat sinks. So I don't know if this came like this, or if someone had done a bodge on this. That's interesting. I never noticed that before. Alright, so one of the issues with these Powerleap adapters is that they require their own power, because basically, as you can see, they have their own little VRMs on here, because these CPUs required some extra funky power requirements. They have their own power adapters, and when I bought the system, it didn't have the real power adapters, but I found a pinout, and basically it's just 5 and 12 volts. So it's kind of like a Berg connector, but they're not quite aligned, so I need to do a little bit of mashing. Eventually I'm gonna make a nice connector and have something so that this isn't so freaking ugly, because look at it, it's all this ketchup and mustard. Alright, so let's plug this in and test it first. I like to try it first just with one CPU. The video card that we're going to start off with today is a NVIDIA GeForce 4 Ti 4600, which is a good era video card for this computer, but I have other plans for this thing eventually, so let's get started with this one and see where we go. Alright, so then power supply is going to be a Corsair CX650M, mostly because I have a whole lot of spare power connectors for these things, and this one popped up locally for like 15 bucks. So it's kind of overkill for this system, but it'll be good. At least it's something I won't have to worry about. The one issue, and we're sort of off camera here. One issue that's going to be kind of hard to show you is that this little clip that helps hold on the extra connector is in the way. So we'll have to get rid of this. Okay. All right, so this and this and this should be good to go here. I'm going to start it off first with just one CPU. Oh, got to connect our CPU power. And let's change our view a little bit. Alright, so hopefully you can hear that. We got fan spin. We got beep. Alright, so as you can see here, Pentium 3 950 megahertz processor, and it's counting up our 1 gigabyte of RAM that I have installed here. Alright, so let's shut this off. And let's put in our other processor. Okay. Flop that around. Gotta plug in my other CPU power connector. Sorry, let's get that going. And power up. Oh. Now power up. Oh, listen to those nasty old fans. Alright, so if I remember correctly, it only shows one processor until it finishes the RAM count. Yeah, how's that? Those fan noises coming through on the speaker. Alright, 2 processors detected. Alright, so we're good to go here. Shut this down. Gonna move the camera. Sorry for seasickness inducing. Alright, so we know our processors work, our motherboard works. Now we gotta go and do the modification. So I'm gonna pop this out, pop this out. Rid of this. Move this out of the way. Alright, so if I remember correctly, the picture on the website had the motherboard oriented like this. So that's how I'm going to orient it, because my brain does not work clear enough to be able to look at things upside down and solder correctly. Set that aside for now. Okay, so let's see here. Let's zoom in a little bit. Oop, too far. Okay, that'll be good. Alright, so here's our clock generator chip. Let's check the website again real quick. Alright, so there's our clock generator chip, and this part is going to be the tricky bit right here. So we have a little SMT resistor. It's a 22 ohm resistor, and we need to solder the right hand side of R99, a 10 kilo ohm resistor. So let's go back to our motherboard. Let's grab this thing. And so the way they did it is, let's just double check that one more time. Yeah, so it's the one right before the cap. Okay, so it's this one right here. So they soldered another SMT resistor onto it. I'm gonna go a little old school here, and I'm gonna do this nice Radio Shack regular old 10 kilo ohm resistor, and we're gonna go down to it. I think I'm gonna leave the jumper somewhere up here. This is gonna be hard to get everything oriented, but I think it'll work okay. Alright, so I'm gonna grab my soldering iron, some solder, and sorry, I just want to double check something. Okay, so you can see right there, I'm gonna come in, just put a little blob of solder where we want it to go. I don't even know if you can see that on the camera. This one would probably be better with a microscope view, but my video capture stuff is being really wonky right now, so I'm sort of fortunate to get this up and going as it is. Okay, let's put that down for a sec. Just gonna cut this lead off at about here. Soldering left-handed. Let's see how this goes. Alright, we're attached. So let's see how many times I rip that off before I get this thing mounted for its final time. Alright, so now we need our jumper, which I probably have lost somewhere around here. Okay, so if I remember correctly, this one is supposed to be soldered to the middle lead of the jumpers. Let's put that right about there. Preemptive soldering. AKA tinning. Alright, so that thing's there. Hey, Justin Morgan, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Alright, so now we got our resistor, we got our jumper block kinda sorta mounted, and let's see, now we need to run, let's check our reference website here. Okay, so that one, the resistor goes to the middle pin, this goes to the first pin, this one goes to the other third pin. Alright, so we are going to use some enameled wire. So let me burn off some of that enamel. And I'm about to drop a giant solder blob right onto the motherboard. Yeah. Gonna move just off to the side a little bit here. Let's do that way. Come on, you thing. There we go. Alright, got our enamel burned off there. So let's go. Let's just cut a chunk of this stuff off. Okay, got one there. Let's get our next lead ready to go. Come on, you little enamel. I think my old weller might be finally kicking. So if anyone has good recommendations or any recommendations for good soldering irons, let me know. Alright, so let's cut a little bit of this off. Guess we'll go in left-handed again. Okay. That looks good. So now I'm going to come around. We need to solder these onto the leads that are already there. Loop that out just a little bit more because I don't want it to accidentally touch something it's not supposed to. Gonna add a little bit of fresh solder down at the bottom of that jumper lead. I have too many things on the big bed bench right now. And of course I knocked off that resistor like I predicted I would. That one looks pretty good. Sorry if you're getting mostly hand in the top of my head here. I'm going to oof. I probably should have broken out the microscope for this one. Okay, so we're going to loop that around. Now I see why they use the SMT resistors. SMT 10 kilo ohm resistor. Okay, get rid of that. Got that tinned. Clean off the tip. Oh yeah, I am a rock star here. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Just soldered two of those leads together. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, so that looks on there. All right. Ooh, there goes my solder. And my scissors. Oh, ow. What a mess this is turning out to be. Although I guess I sort of predicted it. Oh, are you kidding me? I might have pulled off that pad. Oh, jeez, that would suck. Then I definitely need to get the microscope out. Oh, man. Alright, let's see what happens. Let's try to get that again. Alright, I think we got it. Alright, so let's put that jumper on there. Oh, we don't got it. We don't got it. Let me just check something real quick. Gonna put this on before I break anything else. So I can understand why they placed on the website where they placed it. It kind of is out of the way and you can push down on it and potentially change it. Where's my other blue jumper? Put that on there. Darn. Alright. Shoot. Well, this is annoying. Yeah, I think I messed up that trace, that solder pad. Oh, not in. So it's kind of hard to see from here, but you can see we've got, our leads going to the jumpers like they're supposed to, but that point on that on that resistor is fried. So I'm gonna have to switch over to the microscope and take care of this. Darn. Well, that's one of the fun bits about streaming. I mess up a lot. So I'll definitely get this thing rebuilt, or that solder pad repaired. And I'll come back another day, I guess. I want to thank vSwitch Zero and Justin D. Morgan for stopping by. Definitely go check out their YouTube channels. I'm sorry this one got cut short, but